speak for about half an hour or so, half an hour, 40 minutes, then we will leave it open for questions and answers. I have a few slides with which I will talk. Basically, we're at a very interesting stage in the history of food and agriculture, I should say, because of the changes that are taking place in the ecosystem. And it is also an appropriate time to talk about a new decade, because we're at the start of a new decade, and every such turning point will ultimately prove to be a significant one in terms of how the history gets shaped. So I do believe that this decade will be seeing such historical changes in agriculture and food sector. So I would like to talk a little more about that. So all of you can see my screen?
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Okay. So this decade is likely to see some significant changes. But before going into that, let's just look at what is the current status of Indian agriculture. Current agricultural production is around 31 lakh crores, which is around 0.4 trillion USD, which is around 16.5% of overall GDP of the country. We have to achieve $5 trillion economy. You know, this is what Prime Minister has also spelled out. And agriculture will have to grow to 0.8 or 1 trillion out of that. So in the next 5 years' time, how do we double agricultural production or more than double agricultural production is one of the challenges we're all looking at. Currently, 60% of the value is from crops and 40% from non-crops like livestock, forestry, marine, etc. Non-crop is growing faster than crops. I think that is a good part, because I think the over dependence on crops is coming down and non-crop part is coming up. We are currently producing more than 300 million tons of food grains and 330 million tons of fruits and vegetables. Agricultural exports have touched 2.8 lakh crores, $40 billion last year, out of which 20% is rice, 8% spices, 5% cotton. Value-added products are less than 15%. That is one of the facts we have to keep in mind, that we are exporting more of raw agricultural produce than value-added agricultural produce. The comparable numbers are 25% in USA and 49% China, because that's where actually the cream lies. If you export more of value-added products, the profitability will be more and farmers can get more money. We're also importing 1.3 lakh crores worth of agricultural produce, out of which 50% is edible oils. So almost 70,000 crores every year we're importing edible oils. So that's a huge outflow on our foreign exchange. So these are all great achievements, except the last one, but farmer still doesn't make money. That is the issue that is in front of all the policymakers and all the thought leaders in this space. How do we address this particular issue, that farmer is not making money? So looking at what are the likely mega trends in this decade, because I think we have to look at the ecosystem and the environment before we can talk of the actual industry. I have tried to list down a few of the mega trends that are expected in the world agriculture. Some of them will also happen in India. Consumers are moving more and more towards nutritious and immunity boosting foods due to the increased health concerns post-COVID attack. I think that is something which is a trend which has set in, and it is likely to become a permanent trend. Natural resource conservation is increasingly becoming more and more important. Water, soil, these two are seen as very critical, natural resources that we have to conserve. So emphasis on technologies and appropriate economic practices. So not just because technologies are important, no doubt, but economic practices are also very important. You know, as our farmers still follow many economic practices which are still very old-fashioned and not very modern in terms of science. Just to give you an example, the amount of tilling we do is not really required, and it is damaging the soil. So some of the economic practices and the way we grow rice, the standing water in rice, and we're exporting 50,000 crores worth of rice. So it's all, there are many areas which need attention in terms of how we are using natural resources and for what purpose. Climate change will be a major one. It will become more and more forceful in this decade. Modern technologies and economic practices, again, that can help our farmers to fight climate change. Climate change is estimated that it can bring down yields by 25 to 30% in the next 20 years. I think that is an area which needs serious thinking. Traceability of food is assuming a lot of importance. Consumers prefer to understand how that food they are eating is grown and how it has traveled through the whole value chain system. And they would like to give more priority or premium to food that has good origins and good journey throughout the cycle. So reducing the use of pesticides and fertilizers and foods with zero chemical residues, increasing demand for organic food. All this will play a very important role in this decade. Global supply chains are undergoing a change post-COVID situation. Supply chains have to become shorter, and many countries are becoming more aware that they have to become self-sufficient, because during COVID, many of them faced problems, especially African countries, with access to food and access to agricultural produce. So any disaster like this will always make the vulnerable sections of the society or of the world become more and more targets of distress during these times. Nutrition and small farmer welfare are at the center of the stage now. Increasing role of technology, scale up of mechanization and digitization of agricultural operations. New business models are coming up. Biotechnology and its applications, both GM and non-GM, will assume more importance in order to meet the challenges being faced by the farmers and consumers. Now, if you see India, many of them you will find here again, agriculture moving to a demand-oriented system from the current production-oriented system. We have gone through almost 6 decades when production, the more we produce, the better it was. And today we have overproduction of cereals and underproduction of edible oils. So our production currently is not according to the demand patterns. So this has to move to demand-driven agriculture. Consumers are moving to nutritious and immunity-boosting foods. Natural resource conservation we talked about. Climate change we talked about. Traceability we talked about. All these are important in India also, just like they are important in the world. Farmers have to be connected to markets. So if you look at farmers' profitability, the two sides of the equation, one side is his costs, reducing his costs on inputs. But on the other side is increasing his revenue, which is dependent on the yields he gets and the price he gets for the yield. I think connecting farmers to markets is becoming very important role for private markets and competition who can improve farmers' price discovery, thereby increasing his revenues and profitability. Reducing supply chains. Currently, the agricultural produce passes through 7 or 8 supply links, and farmer is getting less than 30% of the consumer price. So this is something everyone is aware that we have to improve this and take farmers' share to above 50 or 60% in the consumer price. The other things that are listed here are that value-added agriculture is gaining more and more importance. This will de-risk farming and improve profitability. Exports thrust. Government is planning that if you read Government of India's agricultural produce export policy 2018, many things are very clear. They want to increase exports from current $40 billion with less than 15% value-added products to $100 billion with at least 30% value-added products in this decade. I think this is a very important objective we have. This can improve farmers' profitability, make the country's agricultural exports more profitable. But farmers also have to be competitive in the world markets. Only then we can export. So their technology will play a huge role. Science and technology will play a huge role. Value chain development will be in focus with improvement of states. Examples, shrimp, with involvement of states. So shrimp, meat, fruits, chilies, some of these value chains are identified already, and these are being given a big push by the government. Shortage and cost of farm labor will increase further. Currently, about 50% of cost of production is labor cost. You can see here that this is the Government of India's data. You will see that human labor in cotton production is 52.5% of the total cost. In rice, it is 47.8. Between AP and Punjab, not much of difference. So almost 50% of the cost is human labor cost. So that means if you have to improve his profitability, we have to look at actually this labor cost. This holds the key. And if you put together human labor, animal labor, and machine labor, it is almost 70%. So it's a huge expenditure for the farmer. So that is something which will attract a lot of attention in this decade. Consolidation of farmers' bargaining power through FPOs. I think this is something on which there is a lot of talk. This will gain much more velocity during this decade. 10,000 high-quality FPOs to be supported with funds, training, and digitization. This is also a task on which government is working, and many private players are also working in achieving this kind of strength at the FPO level. Technology will play a big role. Like I said, scale up of mechanization and digitization and biotechnology. These things are happening between the world, it is a common between the world and Indian agriculture. So I think these are a few things I have listed down as what are likely mega trends during this. On mechanization, I want to say that what is the likely scenario? Delivery of inputs will see use of machines in a big way compared to the previous times. Companies have to find innovative ways of delivering inputs to the crops. Drone applications have picked up really after the recent attack of we have the recent attack of insects for which drones have been used. Drone applications need some regulatory approvals, and that is what it is going through right now. Pesticide spraying machines and custom services on a large scale, this is also something which is likely to happen. It is already happening. Custom services, companies are now moving from selling products like pesticides to selling services. So they will come and actually spray your field instead of selling their product to you. So that is also coming up in a big way. Micro irrigation systems to save water are coming up. Service model is coming up in that. That means you don't have to, farmer need not buy the machine. He can actually take the service from service provider. Labor saving machines for weed management, planting, transplantation. All these machines are coming into picture. Output management will see use of machines in a big way. Harvesting of crops. So you all know already that harvesters are a common thing nowadays. But cotton picking machines are also coming up, and they will get scaled up during this decade. Custom service lease models will dominate this decade. Digital backbone will be the key to all new applications. So one new thing that will happen is that anything that we do in this decade must have a digital backbone. Instead of just doing manually like we have always been doing, anything we do in this decade should have a digital backbone. That's how the progress will be made in this decade. Big data and analytics will make farming more precise, mechanized. So there is a lot of data-based, there is a lot of emphasis on data-based agriculture now. So I think this is also something on which there is a considerable emphasis. And now technologies are available for us to be able to achieve so much of data-based decisions to be taken by the farmers. So I think this is also something on which a lot will happen during this quarter. I will talk very briefly about the recent agri reforms because they will have some significant impact on the way our farmers will actually sell their produce during this decade. Right now it is going through a tough time in terms of acceptance. But during the course of the decade, I am very confident that this will actually get implemented. Objectives are basically to improve farmers' profitability, to connect farmers to the consumers through shorter supply chains, to create necessary farm gate infrastructure for storage. All of you know that we lose heavily in storage. Last year, The losses, post-harvest losses, were estimated to be 90,000 crores. So some of them are happening because we don't have enough infrastructure for storage, trading, and transportation. So for that only government has announced some measures. And to break the grip of vested interest on farmers' price discovery and improve and make the markets open and accessible to private and improve his income. Contract farming will bring value-added agriculture and value chain development and export development. So this is also something on which the reforms are talking about. 1 lakh crores, all of you are aware, that was announced as the fund for agricultural infrastructure projects at farm gate and aggregation points. So I think primary PACs, farmer FPOs, agricultural entrepreneurs and startups, they all can access this through banks. Essential Commodities Act has been amended. Some of the foodstuffs are removed from Essential Commodities Act: cereals, edible oils, oil seeds, pulses, onion, potato, etc. There are no stock limits now. So it has been freed because this was actually holding up private investment in warehousing and storage facilities and other downstream activities that happen here. So far, for many decades, private industry didn't invest in that, but because of this act. So with the modification of this act, now private funds should flow into this space. All of you know that currently farmers have to sell through APMCs, and they have had problems with regard to cartelization in the APMCs, and quality assessments in the APMCs have been very subjective and exploitative. Commission agents and others have been cartelizing the prices, and then farmers also didn't have much choice of going back from the mandi once he comes there. So there was hardly any storage facility and things like that. So there is a lot of exploitation that has happened. Although it offered a certain benefit to the farmers, those who want to sell to the government for procurement purposes, it offered a benefit there. It offered also benefit in terms of having one platform where all the buyers used to come, and there used to be a price, a benchmark price from the mandi that was available for even other deals. But that was not enough, and the result has been price cartels, lower price realization for farmers, improper quality assessments, distress sale by farmers, and exploitation. So this bill actually is this bill actually promotes farmers or gives the farmers the freedom of choice of sale and purchase of agricultural produce. He is now free to sell anywhere in the country. Essentially speaking, that is the thing. In any state, earlier he could not go out of the mandi, but now he can go anywhere. And private industry can set up private mandis with modern infrastructure. Farmers can use electronic trading platforms. This is also specifically mentioned in the act that electronic trading platforms will be promoted, and this will actually help the farmers in reaching markets which are located at far off places. There are many concerns which are raised. You must have read about them in the newspapers. I have tried to address them here. MSP system will continue. Government has made that very clear. Procurement by government will continue. The government really has no choice. They have to procure 70 million tons of food grains every year through mandis for PDS, for public distribution system, and various welfare programs. So I think government will continue to do that. Mandis will collapse because no farmer will sell through mandis. This is not correct, because farmers will still sell through mandis for government purchases. And also, whenever they get a better price, it's only a choice for the farmer. He will have the freedom to sell in the mandi or in the private mandi, depending upon who is offering him a better price. Private buyers outside the mandi will not be paying mandi tax. This is definitely a lacuna in the act. They will have to correct it. Everybody should be on the same level playing field. That recommendation has gone to the government. Private buyers outside will exploit by forcing farmers to sell at lower prices. This is unlikely to happen because private buyers also will compete with each other, and they will have to also compete with the mandi prices. So that will not happen. But we have to keep in mind one fact, that many commodities prices are not decided at there's a lot of international price which plays a role in some of the crops like rice, wheat, and things like that. Fly-by-night operators will enter and exploit farmers. So there's a registration system which will be put in place under Section 17(1), so that everybody cannot. No information about. So these are all addressable issues, and a lot of feedback has gone to the government to make those amendments, and the government is ready to make those amendments. The second one is on contract farming. So it actually empowers farmers to enter into forward contracts. When he grows the crop, he will actually grow the crop as required by the contractor and with an assured price. So the risk of market unpredictability will get transferred from the farmer to the contractor. This enables the farmers to access modern technology, better seed, because the contractor will supply some of these things. And this should also be good for the farmer in terms of price discovery and certainty of income. There are concerns here also. Farmers are not equipped to deal with large private companies. So, but I think FPOs can be strengthened for this purpose, and also some kind of a support mechanism to be put in place by the state governments to help the farmers to do these kind of deals. There's no guarantee that private corporates will pay above MSP to the farmer. Yes, there is no guarantee, but MSP cannot be enforced, because then that will kill the whole idea of this. So because market prices may be above MSP or below MSP, whatever is the market price. So we'll have to look at how farmers have to be supported in case the overall price levels come below MSP, not because of any this thing, but like I mentioned earlier, under the influence of international prices, sometimes they can come below MSP. So we have to just look at that supporting mechanism. Dispute resolution mechanism, yes, there is a concern, and we do agree that in the act it says that farmer cannot go to the court. So this is also something which needs to be corrected. He should have the right to go to the court if he is not happy with the decision taken by the SDM and the appellate authority. Some recommendations have been made to put in place some enablers which will make this succeed, because let's accept that these reforms are important. They are recommended by many committees. They have been under discussion for more than 10-15 years. They must succeed for the benefit of the farmer. So we need some enablers to make them succeed. A digital registration system for all the private buyers, a mandatory registration of all contracts, capacity building for farmers and FPOs. So there is a huge effort that is required to actually train them and build capacities. Creation of a national grid of private digital platforms. There are many platforms now which actually help the farmers to sell their produce. This is also something on which we are suggesting that there should be a national grid of such platforms along with ENAM. Integration of quality assessment, because on electronic platforms, one of the issues is quality assessment. So that should get integrated with the electronic platform. That is also possible. Such apps are available now. We also suggested that there should be an experienced and young business manager in each DM's office to help farmers and FPOs in the district with making contracts with private parties. This kind of an advisory and support mechanism is needed. And also help mandis to upgrade. APMCs also are going to continue to play an important role. So they must be upgraded. They're currently they don't use the latest technology. They don't have the best of the facilities. Modernization of processes is required, and dismantling the nexus of traders is also needed. So all this has to be done simultaneously, so that both the private and APMC mandis become equal in terms of their capacity and technology and processes, and then they're able to compete with each other. So having said all this, now I want to focus on what are the implications of this on, let's say, youngsters like you. Okay, if you want to become entrepreneurs, what are the opportunities that come up because of this? Number one is that you can set up aggregation centers for agricultural produce in villages or clusters and connect them with electronic platforms and buyers. Government wants to support the setting up of 22,000 aggregation centers in the country. All agricultural produce because it is not possible for everybody to go to each farmer and buy. So you need aggregation centers to actually bring the produce together. So that is something which people like you can do. Second is set up private mandis in clusters and tie up with the downstream supply chain. Downstream supply chain players. Set up micro processing units. This is also something which is very, very important to add value and to make farmers' produce achieve a higher price. Set up micro processing units in villages to add value to farmers' produce and link up with secondary processing units in the state or outside the state. And build modern warehouses. This is also there a dire need for this. And provide digital service. So these warehouses should have a digital backbone, like I mentioned earlier. Just building a warehouse is not enough now. You have to provide a digital backbone for that. And then make that warehouse facility link up with banks to provide finance against warehouse receipts. The warehouse receipt system, which has come into picture, which has come into play, should get a big boost because of the digital technology. And there are now businesses which are there just to link up all these warehouses and connect them with. So as an entrepreneur, you can set up a warehouse and join some of those digital networks, which will actually connect you with the banks. You can take up BC work for banks. These BCs are the front-end arms of banks, and they can actually help the banks to do some of their work in the villages and with the farmers. You can set up facilities to clean, grade, dry, and pack agri produce at village level and connect with physical and online retailers. This is also a big opportunity for youngsters. I think this, as more and more business is moving into online business and also into major retail chains, physical retail chains, they need supply chain backups, and that supply chain backup can be produced, can be set up by youngsters, entrepreneurs. Digital capacity building of farmers and governance capacity building of FPOs. So there is a huge need for training of farmers and FPOs in digital technologies, in governance of FPOs and the capacity building of FPOs. This can be done by youngsters like you. And along with advisory services, service centers for farmers. These service centers can carry out digital commerce for inputs and outputs. These are like our e-Seva centers or me-Seva centers. If you set up in the village, and farmer can come there and do his digital transactions from there. And these centers can also give technical advice to the farmers. They can bring financial and insurance services to the farmers, and they can act as agents for insurance companies and for banks. Hand-holding to access several government schemes. Many farmers don't even know how many schemes are there and how to make applications and get benefit out of that. These centers can also do machinery leasing and customer service, which I talked about earlier. I think there is a huge opportunity for entrepreneurs, which is opening up in this decade. There is also a lot of CSR funding, which is flowing into these kind of activities now. Everybody understands the need to develop rural areas and to find alternate livelihoods and work for youngsters in the villages. So there's a need for developmental activities in rural areas, and that can also be done by youngsters using CSR funds that are available. What does it mean for businesses? The businesses also can actually, agri-businesses can enter into value chain development through contract farming. Contract farming will be a big boost in this because of these new acts. For both domestic and export markets, develop value chains, invest in farm gate infrastructure, warehousing, logistics, and supply chain development. These are big companies can do, and they have already started working on these things. They can set up private mandis in rural areas and build a complete network of output management. They can improve price discovery for farmers through reduction in supply chain links and build direct supplies to retail market. That means that whole management of output through private mandis can be done by some of the corporates. They can establish a network of secondary and national level processing facilities. While primary processing, micro processing will be done at village level, you need secondary processing and also at a national level processing facilities, these are all networked in such a way that the product flows from the microprocessing units to the secondary processing units and from there to the national level. FPOs I talked about already. Agribusinesses will have to develop business processes to work with FPOs, strengthen them and make it a successful partnership. I think FPOs can play a huge role in collectivization and also aggregating farms, because our farms have become too small and they have lost some of the strength because of the size becoming too small. So FPOs can actually help farmers also use technologies in a combined way. I think all that is possible. So FPOs will play a crucial role, and we need corporates also to work with them on this. The corporates have to set up systems for traceability of food and safety of food. Food safety and traceability is becoming very, very important, like I mentioned earlier. And upper income groups, particularly even up to middle class levels, they're all looking at this, and this decade will actually see all across the world a huge impetus for this. Invent new models of conducting business. In fact, the challenge or this is a great opportunity to reinvent some of the business models, because technology has changed, business environment has changed, consumers' preferences have changed, and so many things are now possible which were not possible earlier. The same reforms 20 years back would not have worked because there was no technology to back up these reforms that time. So I think new models of conducting businesses, delivering products, education and stewardship of new technologies, all this is possible. Involve rural youth, because youth are going out of agriculture and they want to go away from villages. Can they be brought into the value chain development? And can they provide the last mile connectivity to the corporates? Because corporates also cannot go to all the villages and conduct their business. They need last mile connectivity. The youth can provide that. Implications for agri-tech enterprises is a huge opportunity to introduce digital applications to connect farmers to markets and offer them several services. Opportunity to bring entire agri output trading on to formal digital platforms. You know, a lot of agri trade now happens informally. All that can be brought in. Investors are very keen to pump in money. I will show a slide on that. Innovate new business models to offer solutions which were not possible earlier. This decade will be a golden period for digital applications in agriculture. Technology is developing very rapidly. Obsolescence could be high, so one has to keep pace with it and improve products and service offerings. I think by the end of the decade, the quality of these services will be transformative. They will actually make a huge change, and they will be in a different format. Number of internet users, for example, in India is expected to double by 2026. And most of this growth will come from rural areas. So that means the younger generation of farmers will adopt digital technology tools more rapidly and help in scaling it up. Ag tech, I have already talked about it, that this is coming up very rapidly. Agri tech and on the different things like output trading, extension advice and technical knowledge, using sensors and satellites to manage water better. Satellite imagery, database, data-driven agricultural advisory is catching up. In the last 5 years or 6 years, let's say, around almost $2 billion has come into this space as investment into agri-techs. Currently, about 600 active agri-tech startups are working in the ecosystem. Around 14 million farmers, I think this number has actually gone up since this study was done. They are using agri-tech tools, right? So it is becoming more and more important. 76% of the investment of $2 billion has gone into downstream agri-tech. That means technical solutions to optimize output supply chains. So you can see that investors also see that output management is more important. So they are all putting more money into that, agri-techs which are working in that space. And similarly, others, fintech is there, infratech is there, precision agri-tech is there. So this actually shows where the investors think is the value lying. And these are some of the names you must be already aware of: Cropin, Agrostar, Flybird. Stellabs works with the dairy industry. Dehat, you know, and then Big Basket, Samunnati, Kalgudi, So there are various names here you can see, and like I said, there are 600 which are working. So this is how it is emerging, and very briefly, I will just in 2 minutes I will finish. How should agri businesses adapt themselves? Agri businesses have to work towards more sustainable methods of agriculture. They have to work with supplying supplying inputs which are more friendly to environment, and they should move from selling products to selling solutions. They should actually keep farmers' benefit at the center of their work. Farm service centers will become an Uberization of farm machinery. That will also be a key. If you just say, I want to, I mean, marketing will undergo a change. Technical knowledge transfer to farmers and guiding them towards sustainable agricultural practices will assume a lot of importance. FPOs, I talked about it. Export-oriented agriculture means those who are selling inputs also have to tie up with those kind of corporates who are into value chain development and exports, and work with understanding and working with the digital enterprises. Collaborating with the digital enterprises is also very important for marketing people. Digital operations have to be put into place in all the companies. Transformation of all operations using latest digital solutions. Selling through digital e-commerce platforms. All field operations this year, last 1 year because of lockdowns, many companies have introduced how to do field work on digital apps. Digital and AI systems in plants and QC, touchless engagement with farmers for promotion. This is what I was talking about. Many companies have done in the last 1 year. Use satellite and data and other data analytics, and partner with agri-tech and food tech and fintech enterprises. Human resources. This should be of interest to all of you, that people like you who are entering into the industry must be digitally proficient, and they must have modern outlook. They should be open to change. Systems thinking, end-to-end solutions for farmers' welfare is very important. Not just selling a product and running away from there, or just making money for the company, but we must worry about the farmer always, and we must worry about the environment. Ability to work in collaborations and partnerships, that is also a skill which we must have. Always look for saving natural resources in all operations. While thinking commercially, keep society and environment in mind. So these are a few things which are important for people who are going to work in the industry. So in conclusion, I should say that this decade will be very different and very important in the life of farmers. Because if we can't improve agriculture and make farming profitable in this decade, perhaps it will be too late by 2030. Farmers' lives have to improve. Research, modern technology, and agronomic practices will play a key role. Agri-businesses will see many opportunities for both input and output sectors. Agriculture has to become attractive for youth. Technology and rural entrepreneurship, infrastructure, and value chains will play a role in attracting youth back into this kind of things. So these are a few things I thought I will share. And thank you very much. I will be happy to answer questions. Krishna.
Thank you so much, sir. It was really a wonderful talk. You have given us a vision as to how we should work in the next decade, looking at how the situation has panned out in the last 1 year and last 5 years, basically. The way agri-tech value chain, farm to fork has grown. We also have with us today in the talk Mr. N.V. Ramana, sir. N.V. Ramana sir is an advisor with Samunati Agri Value Chain Finance Company. Ram sir had mentioned about Samunati. So we have Ramana sir, who's an advisor with them. And also Ramana sir is a member of the Academic Council of Food and Agribusiness Schools, our group of institutions, the one which runs the PGDM Agribusiness Management Program. So under his leadership and under Pratap sir and WR sir's leadership, we have changed the entire course curriculum considering the IIM Ahmedabad, IIM Lucknow courses. So Ramana sir, in your experience, with your experience, sir, would you like to add anything to what Ram sir has told before we could go for questions?
You're on mute, Ramana.
Ram Kaundinya sir is my senior and we know each other well. We work on many other issues. So I think his views are really valuable. See, if you remember, we did cover something on the reforms that has happened. That was my talk also at that time. But things are being put into different perspectives. But I think Ramsar's experience is certainly valuable. I think he's also working in the investment space. So these are the ones you normally don't get in terms of in any general presentation. That's the reason I told him initially that I'm sitting here to understand, because every time you speak from a different perspective, you learn a lot. So the life is just full of learning. It's amazing, and I think I agree with yeah, almost everything whatever he said. At this point of time, I think let him answer the questions. No, I'm quite happy to listen.
Okay, sir.
Mhm.
Okay, sir. So we have a few questions, sir. Ram sir. One
Yeah.
of the questions is from Mr. Rajiv Bhatia. He has asked, do you see any unrealized potential for northeast of India? And if so, how should we reduce that gap in northeast of India?
Actually, not only Northeast, entire Eastern India has not had the benefit of the Green Revolution in a way. So I think the government itself has realized that importance that next target is Eastern India, and Northeast definitely will play a very major role because places like Northeast, which are not so much exploited so far in terms of agricultural production, offer a huge opportunity to produce the products and food that is needed by people nowadays. That's what we said, nutrition and organic. And so whether, and they have good diversity of crops there. So I think Northeast will be able to play a very crucial role, and the government has understood that. And I think a lot of money is going into building such infrastructure in Northeast to promote agriculture, which will actually feed into the emerging demand patterns in the consumers around the world.
Okay, sir. So Mr. Chandrasekhara VD, he has written to us. He wants to know from you, why is there no separate accreditation body for seed sector in India?
Accreditation body means, you see, seeds have to pass. So government has set what are called the quality standards for seeds. So when we release seed into the market, it has to pass those quality standards. So that is point number one. Point number two is that a lot of seed is also certified seed, which is certified by the government agency, seed certification agency of each state has got a seed certification agency. They also certify the seed which is getting released even from private industry, but in some varieties, in some crops. Thirdly, there is a national, for the laboratories, can get accredited under the national body, which is there for all labs, right? Whether even for our path labs and everything is accredited under the national body. Similarly, seed company labs are also accredited under a national body. In addition, there is something called ISTA, International Seed Trade Association, which has got a model of a method of recognizing quality laboratories. And so if you have ISTA certification or ISTA accreditation, then whatever seed passes through your lab can be exported without any difficulty, because then the importer need not worry about the quality of the seed. So there is ISTA certification which is available, seed certification agency which is working in every state. There is of course ISO thing is also used by many seed companies. ISO certifications are used by seed companies, and national authority on accreditation, so that is also used.
Thank you, sir. So a few participants have written, and the topic is quite the question is quite similar. So you mentioned about impact for entrepreneurs, agri entrepreneurs, but if you look at the job market in the food and agribusiness sector in the next decade, how do you see the job market in the food and agribusiness sector changing, or is it going to be stable? Any comments on that?
No, I think it will be a good market. There's no doubt in that, because this sector will grow. What has happened in the last 1 year also is that the whole world has understood the importance of agriculture. You know, previously agriculture our agriculturists or those working in the field of agriculture were a bit ignored. Even by the investors, they were not very keen to put money into agricultural enterprises, primarily because they didn't understand the risks which are there in agriculture. They always saw it as a very risky proposition and not a very glamorous field. But everybody has understood now that when a pandemic strikes like this, it is food, which is the most important thing. That's what we all ran for. Whenever there were curfew relaxations, we went to buy food, not to buy TVs or cars or things like that. So everybody understood that food is the most essential commodity. So I think investments are growing. When investments grow, this industry, this sector will grow, more jobs will come. But like I mentioned in my slide, people who are aspiring to get into those jobs, or even those who are working today in agriculture-based companies, must reskill themselves, must be skilled enough to handle digital technologies. They should be able to handle new business models. They should be able to think differently in a situation where the markets are open, the markets are more competitive for output, farmers are given more choice. All these things will make a huge difference to the way you work. So I think it is important for people to be properly equipped physically, mentally to deal with this. But I do see that the opportunities will grow rapidly. I don't see any issue there.
Thank you so much, sir. All those who are participating in this talk, if you have a query, you can ask right now. Just unmute your mic. Please state your name and you could ask the question. If anyone wants to ask, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, this is Chandrasekhar from Nashik.
Yeah.
Sir, for seeds varieties, for means like garden, plant gardens in the gallery, is there any authentications to grow the plant of the seeds, to purchase the seeds varieties?
For kitchen gardens or for terrace garden or for balconies and all that, is it?
Yeah, kitchen garden and balconies.
Yeah.
All kind of.
So there is no separate seed right now for that purpose, but it depends on the crops that you want to grow. Mostly there will be vegetables and leafy vegetables and other vegetables. So there are seed packets being specially designed for this now. Recently, I know that Bayer has released a pack like that, which is meant for kitchen gardens. Similarly, many companies have done it. So I think you can get, nowadays, these are also coming through post. They're just delivering them through post. So if you just look up some of those things on the company websites, it is possible to get such seeds.
Anyone else would like to ask a question? Any faculty members, any students?
I am Santosh from Bangalore. I would like to ask the question.
Go ahead, Mr. Santosh.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm Santosh from Bangalore from Sasya Systems. We are a agri-tech firm making some automation systems. My question is, for the last 2-3 years, we have been making some moisture-based automation system for irrigation and fertigation systems. We are a technocrat actually. After 25 years of these things, we saw a place where we can put our technological skill into this area. Now, our greatest concern here is, for the last 2-3 years, we are working on this to have a agronomics kind of person into our board. We cannot afford them in our in the team. But when we reach to the colleges and all those things, agriculture college, we don't find them, taking that much of interest in us. I don't know why. So my question is there any plan in the future to have the, any marriage between this automation or for all those things and precision irrigations and the, normal agriculture practices? There has to be marriage, or there has to be marriage of this kind, and then they should be taking some kind of this, studies of this kind, so that whenever people like us comes into this field, they will be recognized that yes, this is also a field, not like very core of the agriculture, and then we get isolated. So that is what my question is.
So, there are many people like you who are basically technocrats who have started working on solving some of the problems of the farmers by using modern technologies. They could be digital technologies or they could be satellite or whatever. And like you mentioned, the work that you are doing, such technocrats definitely need help with agricultural knowledge and agricultural domain expertise, because I think that is what will link you to the markets. It will link you to the farmers. So I think one of the things I showed 3 slides where on the corner you might have seen ThinkAg. ThinkAg is an organization which I have co-founded along with 3 others. We are actually helping startups with some of this work. We are connecting them to people who can actually help them with the technical knowledge, with connecting them to universities, connecting them to researchers, or connecting them to farmers and things like that. So a little bit of a mentorship is possible in this. This is badly needed because a lot of agri-techs that I mentioned earlier, 600 agri-techs are operating today. They're all started by technocrats. Many of them don't have domain knowledge of agriculture, and they all need this. So I think there is an effort going on towards this. Specifically, since you are in Bangalore, if you need any help, you can let me know. Just send me a mail. I can connect you with some people in Bangalore who can help you with bridging that gap of agricultural domain knowledge for you, and also connecting you with some of the institutions which can help you in growing your business.
Thank
Okay.
you, sir.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who would like to ask a question? So there is one question which has come from 2 people actually. They want to know what is the current trends in the seed industry.
Current trends in seed industry. There are, I could have spoken about that a little more. So seed industry will also undergo a lot of change in this decade. So 2-3 areas will be becoming very important. One is that some of the crops which were traditionally not much attention was paid to them by seed industry. For example, the grains, what are called the smart grains, or the nutritious grains, millets, and those kind of things. There will be much more attention being paid now to bring out better quality, to make more research investments, and make a better quality seed for that for those crops. Because I think the demand for rice, wheat, and some of these cereals is coming down, and this is something which is a very important area where seed industry is diversifying. Second is that there is, as I mentioned, there is a greater need for research and use of science. Many modern technological tools are becoming available now. For example, gene editing type of technologies, which will help us to come up with products which address farmers' needs much faster than what we were doing through traditional breeding. So that is also something on which a lot of industry is making investments. The third is that a lot of agronomic practices, which I talked about, have to be promoted. For example, you take rice. Why should we have transplanted rice? That is a question which is being debated now. There is no need for transplantation and standing water in rice. We can grow rice just like we grow wheat. So it is a direct seeded rice system which will be promoted. And this will need a huge effort from seed companies, because they have to develop some varieties which are suitable for that. They also have to develop varieties and also promote those agronomic practices among farmers. Fourth is mechanization. Mechanization is not just bringing machines. Mechanization also will mean you need suitable varieties. Varieties which suit mechanization are different from varieties which don't suit mechanization. For example, cotton, if you take, our cotton plant is like a tree. It is a huge, big bush with so many branches and so much of, so much of leaves and things like that. So you can't run a machine in our current cotton fields. So if you have to run a harvesting, picking machine in cotton fields, the plant architecture has to be very different. So seed companies are working on developing that architecture cotton plant, which will facilitate movement of machine. And machine can harvest only once. Currently, cotton is harvested thrice. Picking is done thrice today because the flowers come in 3 flushes. So the output also comes in 3 flushes. So currently it is picked thrice, but in a machine harvesting, it has to be picked only once. So the entire crop has to come to maturity at one stroke. So all these things need seed work. I mean, seed has to be suitable and seed has to be developed for that purpose. So that work is going on. Similarly, in many crops, you take maize, you take other crops which have to get ready for mechanization. Seed industry is working on bringing out varieties which are meant for mechanized cultivation. Another area is micro irrigation, for example. The varieties which give the best results under micro irrigation will be different from the varieties which have been giving best results under flood irrigation so far. So seed industry is developing varieties which are suitable for drip irrigation systems or for hose reel systems of irrigation and things like that. So that work is going on. Another area where seed industry is bringing out products is for greenhouse cultivation. Currently, greenhouse cultivation has not grown in India mainly because we don't have suitable varieties. And we still import for, I don't know how many of you know, but most of the greenhouse cultivation is done with imported seeds because we don't have suitable seeds in India. So seed industry is developing some of these seeds which are suitable for this kind of thing. So there are areas where seed industry is working, but the two fundamental changes that are taking place, one is increased role of hybrids. I think that is something which is increasing, and so seed industry is working towards bringing out better quality hybrids for use by the farmers in some of the crops. There is also something called SRR. If you all understand that seed replacement rate, currently seed replacement rate actually indicates how many times farmer is replanting the seed. Because technically also it is clear that the scientists have also proved that farmer should replace seed with newly purchased seed at least every alternate year in an OP crop. Hybrid crop anyway has to buy every year. Even government has this target of increasing the SRR in the country. SRR of 100 means he is buying seed every year. SRR 10 means he is buying seed once in 10 years. So it's like that. So SRR is going up. For that also a lot of education is needed at farmers level. Seed treatments to be done on farm when there is a farm saved seed. So a lot of work is going on many of these fronts. I mean, I can go on for next 1 hour about seed industry, but I think in the interest of time, I've just highlighted a few things.
Thank you, sir. Considering the time duration, we have crossed 3:30. With your permission, can we take 2 final questions? Someone has.
Sure. Yeah, sure.
So one, Mr. Abdul, he has written, no, not Abdul, Mr. Malik, sorry. He wants to know a bit about your comments and how the medicinal plant industry is growing. If there is anything you would like to comment on that, medicinal plant industry.
See, medicinal plants have not been much in the seed industry domain so far because this has remained primarily with ICR's medicinal plants and institutes. And most of the applications are in pharmaceuticals and for medicinal purposes. So it has a bit remained outside the seed industry purview. But in terms of importance, definitely they are growing. I think with the increased emphasis on finding natural, natural solutions for many of our problems, I think the medicinal plants are growing. But these are all very niche areas. These are all not areas which will become so big that they will be, the whole market will be flooded by them. They will always remain niche. They will always remain small and but nice market segments, which are used by some people who are interested in using that type of product category. So yes, to answer the question, it is coming up, but I must also say that it will never be as big as a rice market or a pulses market or an oilseeds market.
So we'll take a last and final question. Mr. Rajiv wants to know your comment on the rail freight transportation for agri-produce.
I think government has recently started a lot of work on this by rail and by air both. Although in India, transportation still remains primarily by road. I think it is still road dominated, truck dominated. See, in rail, there are some natural constraints that you have to take it up to the railway station and loading, and then after unloading also it has to be transported. It is not a door-to-door delivery like in trucks. So there are some restrictions. But for example, during the lockdown, railway freight transportation was very good actually. It gave us a good opportunity. For example, last year in April, when there was a complete lockdown, the seed industry was in big problem, because that is April, May is the time when seed moves to the markets. This is the two most crucial months for seed movement. If the seed was not moving, then Kharif plantings would have got affected. So at that point of time, we went to the government and talked to them, and that time normal trains were not running. The government made special freight goods trains available to the seed industry to move seeds to far off markets. That actually helped. And afterwards also you have seen that the Prime Minister himself flagged off some train, goods trains for moving agricultural produce. I think that is going on, but it has so far been more of not as a big initiative. Yes, it has just started. I think we have miles to go, but there are some natural constraints which I mentioned.